This is actually a makeup class for our May 31st class that I was not able to host, and I apologize for that. I sent a few of you an email explaining the reason, and I want to clarify it here. I'm a single mom, and my daughter will always come first, and it was her last school concert of the year, and of course, I was not going to miss it. So I am so sorry I had to cancel the class, but I promised a makeup class, and this is it. Now, the class is very simple. It's a fusion. It's a combination between career development and mindfulness. So my name is Nathali Cano. I'm a cybersecurity engineer. And as I was saying, the class is pretty much a collage of my background, if you could say it that way. And I have a background in social work for over 12 years. Prior to breaking into the cybersecurity industry, I actually worked as a technical recruiter for Amazon. At the same time, I'm a certified Ayurvedic counselor and therapist, and I've been practicing Ayurveda and seeing clients for over 6 years now. So pretty much this class is, like I said, it's a fusion, it's a collage, it's a combination of all the skills that I have gathered through the years that has helped me not only, again, embark in different careers, break into different industries, but also help people on the way. I actually developed a great methodology on how to land a job faster, especially for individuals that are looking to break into a tech industry. It does not necessarily mean it needs to be for cybersecurity. It works on tech, but it's, the feedback that I have received through the years sharing this methodology with individuals is absolutely, is mind-blowing to me. And this is why I feel confident about sharing it. But at the same time, I love the combination that we have in this particular class. It's really, we talk about our concerns, our struggles, what is it that we're looking to achieve, what are some of the blockages that we have. Some of those blockages are mental blockages, emotional blockages, and very practical blockages as well. So we explore those things, and we try to, again, in a very positive and very diversified environment. We hold these classes, like I said, once a month, and it's a beautiful environment. We really do learn a lot from each other, and at least from my side, I do my best to share the tools and techniques that I have learned through the years that has helped many people. And this is pretty much what it is. But anyway, with that being said, if you resonate with it, I highly encourage you to sign up to the class. If you go to the WiCyS military affiliate website, the description is going to be not only at the end of this presentation at the resource section, but at the same time, you can see it in the links that I've posted. Well, with that being said, let's start. So what is Ayurveda? It's a medical science. And you might be saying, what do you mean by medical science? Well, when we talk about allopathic medicine is actually the medicine that we go to the doctors, like the ones that we recognize here, especially in the West or in the United States, more specifically. So Ayurveda has all the branches of allopathic medicine. By that, I mean Ayurveda has psychology, surgery, pediatrics, geriatrics, OBGYN. It has everything you can imagine, they have it. I guess the basic principle of Ayurveda revolves around the belief that optimal health actually results from the balance between mind, body, and spirit. So like I was saying, Ayurveda really recognizes the person's unique constitutions and emphasizes, and in a way, it makes emphasis in the interconnectedness of the human body with the natural world. By that, we can say that Ayurveda really encompasses everything that makes us a human being. I personally am someone that I'm very practical in nature, very pragmatic at times in the way I think, the way I act, the way I am. So when I came across Ayurveda was not the first science or the first methodology that came into my life. By the time I already had a very good grasp and understanding of other, you could say, natural medicines or just schools of thoughts. But so when I came across Ayurveda, it really I was actually in India. I was traveling to India and I happened to be in the Himalaya. I had no idea that I was there. Very long story. Unfortunately, I don't have it. It's a cool and interesting story, but yes, it's true. I ended up being in the Himalaya, or the Himalaya, how in India they call it. And Himalaya happens to be the world capital of yoga and Ayurveda. So I had no idea that what Ayurveda was until I was there, and I started seeing all this amount of people from all around the world just gathering in this, and just they seem so at peace, like genuinely. I remember seeing this group of gentlemen, and when I spoke to them, they were coming from Holland. The other people, like they were from all over the world, and then that's how I got to learn about Ayurveda, but spending some time over there with the locals and learning about it, and of course yoga. But Ayurveda really was what made the whole difference for me. So when I came back, I signed up to study under two amazing Ayurvedic physicians. One was Dr. Naina and the other one was Dr. Vasant Lad. So Dr. Vasant Lad is the one that I learned the most. I've been learning from him for many years. And he happens to be one of the pioneers of Ayurveda here in the United States. He brought Ayurveda to us back in the 70s. It's a beautiful, beautiful story. If you go to ayurveda.com, that's him. He owns one of the most recognized and the most prestigious Ayurvedic institutes in the nation, but I just love also his nature. Like I've spoken to him many times. He's just such a beautiful person. But anyway, I just want to be very transparent and say I am not an Ayurvedic physician. And as a matter of fact, everything that we're going to be learning over here, please always take into consideration that I'm not intending for anyone to adopt Ayurveda, to subscribe to Ayurveda. I always say to people, keep an open mind. And at the same time, just take what works for you, and what doesn't make sense or it just doesn't resonate, just leave it. But at least learn a little bit about what Ayurveda is, because again, in my experience, it has helped so many people. And even though Ayurveda tends to be more on the medical side and more on the balancing of our own mind and body, great feedback that I have received from my students and clients throughout the years is actually on the relationship department. Ayurveda helps really to bring harmony into our relationships because it provides us with tools to understand the nature, to understand why do we have certain tendencies, why certain characteristics, why certain likes and dislikes. And when we start recognizing that, wow, okay, you know what, this seems to be pretty accurate. I don't know how this is, because it is. I mean, just give it a try, and I think it's going to happen for you too. But anyway, let's dive into it. As I mentioned before, I always ask individuals, please keep an open mind, because if this is the first time you're hearing about Ayurveda, it's a beautiful science. It's a very, very practical, as I said, but also it's very simple to understand, but the development of the first class, which is this one, can be a little tricky because we are for the first time ingesting this information, which is a little different from what we hear most of the time. So just keep an open mind. Now, the first thing that I want us to talk about is the doshas. So the doshas are the three fundamental energies and principles that govern in a way the functioning of our bodies and our minds. This is as per Ayurveda. Now, let me simplify that statement. So what we're really talking about here is Ayurveda believes that every single person, every single human being has the five elements in them. We all have the five elements in them. The animals have the five elements in them. Like everything that we see, everything that's tangible has the five elements in it, even untangible things too. And we can corroborate that statement with science, right? Like when we go and we explore some of the we see this in physics, right? Everything comes down to energy, and energy has an expression. Doshas is a Sanskrit word that represents, or its meaning is body constitutions, right? So body constitutions reflects to the way we think, the way we feel, and everything that makes us who we are as a person. That's I really want us to, when I say dosha or body constitution, just think of everything that encompasses a human being. For example, Vata, the Vata dosha is associated with movement, creativity, flexibility, and much more, but let's just leave it at that. But Pitta is linked to metabolism, digestion, and transformation. And Kapha represents stability, structure, and nourishment. Now, so remember, as I said, every dosha has their own characteristics, okay? Now, every single dosha has the 5 elements. So for example, this is just a quick introduction. This entire class today is just going to be an overview. The class is going to have, we're going to be diving into a lot of terminology. We're going to be diving into obviously very new concepts, but it repeats itself over and over. I'm going to be repeating many of the same concepts in every single class. But in this one, mostly we're going to focus on the Pitta dosha. Why the Pitta dosha? I'm going to, again, for this class, because my goal for all of us is to truly have a very concise and a very good understanding of the basics of Ayurveda. The reason why I'm choosing the Pitta dosha over Vata and Kapha is because the Pitta dosha, in my experience through the years teaching this class, is the easiest to understand. And it's also one of the most common ones. There's a lot of individuals that have Pitta imbalances. And look what I just said. I said the word imbalance because we're going to be focusing mostly on the imbalances. It's important to recognize the balanced characteristics of each dosha or each body constitution, but it's much more important to analyze and recognize within ourselves what are the imbalances that we are experiencing from each element. And when we're grouping, and in this case, we're grouping those elements into 3 groups, which makes it easier. Now, the Vata dosha represents in a different way the Pitta and Kapha. So I'm just going to read this. This is literally, I'm not going to explain much over here for this one. We're just going to read a little bit, and then we're going to move into understanding the characteristics of each of the 5 elements. And here we're talking about the groups only. We are now going to move into describing the characteristics of each of these elements. So this is going to drive absolutely everything that we're going to be talking in this class when it comes to Ayurveda. So it's very super extremely easy, but at the same time, the more we have these characteristics in mind associated to each of the elements, the easier it is for us to spot these characteristics in our environment, in the people that we meet, in the conversations that we have, in the food that we eat, in the way that we are, because Ayurveda, and this is one thing, for some of you, I'm not assuming that nobody actually heard about Ayurveda before. I'm sure some of you have heard about Ayurveda, especially here in the United States. Ayurveda has gained great recognition, mostly as the sister science of yoga, because it is the sister science of yoga. So individuals that are into yoga, the majority of them have heard about Ayurveda. Yoga, at least here in the West, is mostly known because of the asanas, right? The different movement and postures, but it's much more than that. Really, Ayurveda, yoga it's an approach to great awareness, to great unity, to great you could say, to great liberation of pain. And it really is a beautiful, beautiful practice. And it's much more than what we know. Ayurveda has the exact same end goal in yoga, but Ayurveda uses the human body in all its entirety, right? It's in a medical way. It's the same exact thing. It's to achieve balance, is to achieve greater state of minds, is to achieve more clarity, is to achieve more understanding of who we are, more harmony with ourselves and others. And I'm going to talk about me. The way Ayurveda helps me is because I already know and understand the basics. I already know and understand well, I've been studying for a long time, so I'm a little bit past the basics. But what I'm saying is, at the very basic level, it allows me to recognize when I'm getting imbalanced, when I am showing characteristics of an element that is imbalancing me, that something is out of balance. And sometimes just that ability to see how certain imbalances start taking place in your psyche, the way you think, the way you act, the way you do things in your own body, certain physiological tendencies are happening, right? Like something is changing in my physiology, and I believe this is a kapha imbalance or a pitta imbalance or a vata imbalance. By recognizing the symptoms, by associating the element to that particular ailment or that particular imbalance that I'm experiencing, it allows me to immediately take action. When we don't know what's happening, or we don't have any tools to work with, then where do you start? If you don't know where the beginning is, then where do we start? And Ayurveda really helps us to start where we are. And that's why the most important thing to recognize is, what is our imbalance? You might be a fire element that has an imbalance with the earth element. And that's why it's being so difficult for you to navigate certain emotions, to navigate certain thoughts, certain patterns, or you just keep coming across the same issues, but we might not be recognizing that the imbalances that we're experiencing can be, I wouldn't say easily, but they can be mitigated. There are things that we can do. And this is where Ayurveda, where I want to meet you guys. I hope we really meet at this intersection where it's like, okay, I have a tool that can help you to start recognizing certain patterns in yourself, that when you start seeing them happening, in a way, it's a preventative measure, right? Okay, I literally start seeing these things. What can I do? Oh, Ayurveda suggests that this is a good thing to do, and it helps, you see. And if it doesn't help, just let it go, just let it be, and just go look for something else, because nobody has time to just do or work with things that that doesn't work. But that's pretty much what it is. Now, so let me dive into the characteristics itself. So when I'm going to be posing questions, if I say to you, while you look at the first image, right, we have the fire element with some marshmallows. When you focus on the fire element itself, what comes to your mind? I want you to describe it. So we could say it's bright, right? What is this in there? It's sharp, it's destructive. And this part I always say. So the fire element is one of the strongest, most intense, it's the most intense element. And I always say fire is transformative or destructive. Fire, it has the ability to transform, right? We can see this when we're cooking. In this case, there's marshmallows. The marshmallow, I'm assuming before it was placed on the fire, it was white, and it's transforming little by little into a different shape and a different color. That is the transformative aspect of the fire element. Now, what happens when we leave the fire unsupervised? It can be extremely destructive, right? Like just recently, we have been having issues with the situation in Canada, right? The forestal fires, they're out of control. And that's what happens. So it can be a very highly destructive element if it's not controlled or contained properly. It's intense, it's dry, and it's volatile, right? So let's go back to it. It's bright, it's heating, it's sharp, it's transformative, destructive, intense, dry, and volatile. Remember, describing the element itself is extremely important. Anyway, so let's move to the air element. So the air element, if I ask you, give me, what would you say if I say, can you please describe the air element? I'm hoping you're going to say things like the air is dry, it's unpredictable. Unpredictable, I want us to equate that word with movement. So movement, right? We don't know where the air is blowing from. We know it's somewhere. We don't know. It's very unpredictable. It's always moving. It's cold, it's light. and it's dry. Now, when we talk about the water element, what comes to your mind when we talk about water? So it's fluid. We can say it's of substance, meaning it's heavy, it has some weight to it, right? And it's colorless and it's cold. The earth element. When we talk about the earth element, for me, yes, it's heavy, meaning it has weight to it, stable, right? It has stability, structure. It's very nurturing. When we put a little seed in the soil, what happens? We expect that seed to, to grow. And that is the nurturing part of this beautiful element. It's dark and it's heavy, right? We already said it's stable. Now, the ether, so it's 5 elements, right? Fire, air, water, earth, and ether. Ether is very simple. It just provides space. Ether is just a container. That's pretty much what it is. Whew. Okay, now that we have that out of the way, I really, really hope that it's going to start making sense at this point. So, as I mentioned, we're going to focus on the Pitta dosha. So the very basics of everything is understanding the characteristics that we just mentioned for each of the 5 elements, right? The heating element, the cold element, the movement element, the stability element, all the elements have their own characteristics. And as we keep that in mind, we're going to start seeing their expression. How do they express in us? So, for example, let's talk, when we say someone is a Pitta person, when Ayurveda says someone is a Pitta dosha individual. So, and again, the reason why I'm focusing on Pitta is because it's the easiest to understand. And it's important to start with simplicity. And this is a simple explanation, so let's go with it. So Pitta individuals, let's talk about the physical aspects of this individual. How does the element of fire represent in them, physically speaking? So due to the excessive heat, they already run hot pretty much in every aspect of the world. There are individuals that usually have a higher body temperature than most, which obviously leads to excessive heat in the body, causing symptoms like hot flashes, excessive sweating, strong sensitivity to heat, as I mentioned. Now, on the digestive side, these individuals have a great digestion system, right? They have a great digestion power. It's not the strongest, but it's the fastest. So a Pitta imbalance actually can result in hyperacidity, heartburn, and indigestion. Even though the digestion tends to be fast, which allows for them to lose weight easily, but they gain weight easily too. But thanks to the digestion power, they tend to be in the middle when it comes to the body frame, right? They're not too thin, they're not too heavy. They can be a little bit, they actually tend to be more fit and muscular. But again, thanks to the heating, the intensity of the element in them is what allows them to have the capacity to have such a fast digestion system, which is great for them. This is a great, great thing in them. They really can digest almost anything. But when it's imbalanced, out of balance, like I said before, hyperacidity, heartburn, indigestion can happen. Again, I want us to start in a way correlating, right? When we talk about hyperacidity or heartburn or indigestion, mostly heartburn, it's really hot, like it feels like something is burning us, right? That's why it's called heartburn. What element would you give to that, right? It's Pitta. So again, we're seeing the manifestations, right? Over here, we're really now learning how the element itself represents, or how does it show in the body. Over here, we're talking about the physical aspects, but we're also going to talk about the personality characteristics. Pitta imbalances in a way can manifest as skin conditions as rashes, hives, acne, and inflammation. So especially in the younger years for Pitta dosha individuals, most of them suffer from acne. Now, not all acne is associated with the fire element. specifically the inflammatory acne. So this is the red acne, right? The one that's very inflamed and very red. The one that's white is kapha. That's mostly an earth imbalance, earth element imbalance. So the white ones, no. It's the ones that are red, very, very inflamed. Those, so individuals that has a Pitta dosha imbalance in their younger years, many of them suffer from inflammatory acne. In their late 30s, early 40s, the acne might start, or just continued in the back mostly. Actually, the Pitta dosha governs metabolism, as I mentioned before. So when it is imbalanced, there may be issues like excessive thirst, excessive hunger, and difficulty maintaining weight. So when it's very, very imbalanced, they're always thirsty. Like they sweat a lot, and usually their sweat when they sweat a lot, this particular dosha tends to have I will say, like an acid sort of smell. So it's a very peculiar smell to their sweat, and it's very, very Pitta. It's a very Pitta thing. But anyway, so it's very important for this individual to eat every 2 hours because they get so extremely cranky. And not only that, I mean, physiologically speaking, it imbalances them a lot, right? They can't concentrate properly. They get very, very irritable, very, very moody. It really does a number on them. It's not a joke. They do need to eat. They're the ones that need to eat the most. You see, at least every 2, maximum 3 hours, because it's very important. It has a kapha energy. It really balances them, right? See, and this is what we need, right? We're going to be learning how the imbalances expresses themselves in us as per the particular dosha that we're talking about, but also what helps us to balance it. We're going to be diving into that. Now, going back to the inflammation. So inflammation is something that is extremely common in them when they are imbalanced. When they are imbalanced, inflammation is everywhere. So let's talk about, for example, they have rhinitis, right? Too much, like just an inflammation of the sinuses. Rhinitis, conjunctivitis, which is pretty much pink eye, bursitis, arthritis, tendonitis. So all sorts of inflammation is very extremely common in them because of the excessive heat. Now, when we talk about the personality traits, this is where I want us to focus a little bit more, because we see sometimes this is where we start really kind of like dive in a little bit more into how this science can really help us. So when we talk about the personality of a Pitta dosha, these are individuals that, as we know, have a lot of heat in them because it's mostly the fire element. But remember, this element also, this dosha, this body constitution, also have the water element in them. How much have we spoken so far about the water element in respect to this dosha? Not much, right? Well, this is where we start. So the water element represents emotions, represents fluidity, represents just the ability to change, right? To just go with the flow, right? It's a very soothing, very cooling, very healing element. So when an individual has an imbalance of the Pitta dosha, it means that the water element has been in a way evaporated. Because what happens when we leave a pot of water in the oven when the heat is really, really high? Well, it's going to evaporate eventually. Let's talk about the positive side of this. So they are beautiful, beautiful leaders. Really, they are great leaders. This is genuinely because of the intensity. Remember, brightness, intensity, sharp. So this is all goes back to their mind, their ability to lead others. They have an immense ability of leadership. because they have such great agility, mental agility. They have an ability to see things very clearly, right? The luminosity in the element, they bring light. When this element is balanced, it provides light. And it's also in their way of thinking. They're not only great leaders, but they're visionaries. They can see things that other people cannot see. They can see things coming in a capacity that other doshas cannot see because of the sharpness, because of the luminosity, because of the intensity of this element itself. And I hope now I'm doing this very intentional. I'm bringing the names, the characteristics, right? I'm really correlating the characteristics to their own personality traits, because it's important to start seeing why is that I was emphasizing on understanding and dissecting in a way each and every single element. Right now we're talking about the Pitta element, so the luminosity, the brightness, the sharpness really represents in them in their ability to think. They're great leaders, as I mentioned. They make great doctors, great CEOs. They make great presidents. They make great anywhere these individuals, and you usually will find them in positions of power, because that's where they have the most capacity to create change. They are change makers, really. They really are all, when they're balanced, they're all about learning, right? They love everything that has to do with the mind, right? They love learning and they love mentoring others. They love giving back. They love being able to be of service to humanity in every capacity they can, right? Through their words, through their actions, through so many things. They're incredibly good at managing businesses, managing teams, just putting plans together and sticking to it. This is the individual that is best at achieving their goals. They're highly, highly goal-oriented, extremely goal-oriented, actually. Everything about them is bigger than life when they are balanced. They want to leave a legacy. They want to leave things better than the way they found them. They have so much energy, right? They have they're very passionate individuals. They have, like I said, an innate capacity of leading others towards greatness. And many companies used to, or they still do. I know in Switzerland, in Germany, I actually read a few articles a few years ago. So I'm sorry, I cannot tell you the name or anything. It's just, this is in my mind, how certain companies in other countries actually will choose the teams for specific reasons. For example, the diversity team, or they're going to choose the leadership team. They literally start creating teams, but they will use Ayurveda to analyze the doshas of the individuals to put them in the teams that they believe, based on the expressions of the element in them, where the company believes that they will excel the most, because they can be seen. Like, for example, the characteristics of a Pitta dosha physically also represents in their features. Usually, and I'm just making an emphasis, I'm going to go back to this thought. So the reason I'm saying it is, you might say, okay, how were they able to tell? Well, because also the features give it away. So, for example, and this is something I skipped. So the features of a Pitta dosha, these are individuals that usually you will recognize them by their gaze. They have a very strong gaze. When they look at you, you feel it, right? They just have so much intensity in the way they look at you, the way they speak. Personally, I tend to assess individuals' doshas by the way they speak. You see, everybody has a communication style, and Pitta dosha, when is balanced, they're talkative individuals, but very straight to the point. You see, they're not very dried or cutthroat as opposed to when they're imbalanced. But the communication style, in a way, that's one of the things that I use the most. Ayurveda offers many, many tools to identify, to get to know yourself and to understand people, obviously, other people. In my case, in business, at work, in personal relationships, I use Ayurveda a lot just to have an understanding of what is the type of individual I'm dealing with, or what are the characteristics that I'm seeing in someone. Because it's always a great tool to just have better relationships and to be more ready when we're going to meet someone, whether it's for business or at work, anything. When you identify, oh, this individual is presenting Pitta characteristics or Vata characteristics, you kind of already come a little bit prepared, because you know what balances them and what imbalances them just in a communication style. Nobody can actually hide. Nobody can hide the expressions of their elements. They might do a really good job at kind of hiding the negative aspects, but it's always going to show. But anyway, so as I was saying, they are great leaders. These are individuals that whatever they set their mind to, they will go after it and they will achieve it. These are the most successful of all of the other two doshas, because they're extremely goal-oriented. Everything about them is energy, right? Is this fire in them. It's insatiable sometimes. Now, they may grade public speakers as well, because again, they have this innate ability to just stay in track. Whatever it is that their mind, they have the ability to present it to an audience in a very dynamic way, in a very practical and simplified way, because of their ability. Their mental agility is what allows them to translate very complex topics into simple words. They're very, very good at simplifying very hard and complex tasks. At the same time, they're incredible employees. Really, they really are great at work. They love working. It's really in their nature. They're very, very good at organizing, planning, strategizing. Again, visionaries. These are individuals that people look up to them as mentors, as educators, as someone that is going to motivate them, get things done, get to the next level of their lives. That's the energy of Pitta. It's the transformative energies. So they're very, very useful, very practical individuals. Now let's talk about a little bit on the opposite side. How do they look when they're imbalanced, in a way, if I can speak? So this dosha, let's go back to the characteristics that we mentioned before. We said bright, sharp, unpredictable, destructive, transformative, and heating. So the heating aspects of this element make these people extremely sensitive. They struggle with anger issues, very low. They have very, very short patience. They're not very patient. They like things their way, extremely controlling. They will abuse power in any way they can, as long as they can. When they're very extremely imbalanced, these individuals will stop at nothing to achieve their goals. And because they seek positions of power, and because they do so well in those positions, they usually will do anything they can, even if that means abusing power, abusing others, being very judgmental. They're very harsh with themselves. They're very, very pragmatic in a very negative way. They leave very little room to kind of like be open to the possibility that someone else might see it differently. It can be extremely stubborn. There's individuals, when they are imbalanced, also have tendency towards jealousy. Again, control issues it's very evident in them. Again, I go back to the communication style. Remember how we also said that this element is dry, sharp? So the communication style, when they're imbalanced, they are very, very dry. They're very cutthroat. right? Which is the sharp in this element. They're very cutthroat. They go straight to the point. And in my experience, that is such a telling sign. Like I said, to me, communication it's the most telling sign of a person's imbalances. And we see this a lot. We see this especially in corporate, which is very, very sad because we have normalized such an incredible imbalance of the representation of this element. There is this, you see, there are individuals that are highly ambitious. They're very, very ambitious. They have, which makes, again, this is in the personality. Ayurveda actually talks about something that is called likes attracts likes, or increases. Likes increases likes. Meaning, if I am a Pitta dosha, in order for me to bring balance to my imbalances, I need to bring an element that is balancing to the Pitta dosha, that is balancing to the fire element. For example, the water element or the earth element. All the other elements are balancing in their own way, but water and earth are very cooling. They're very soothing, right? So when these individuals are not working with the water element, because remember, Pitta dosha is both, it's fire and water. This is what makes them so harsh with others. You see, being around an imbalanced Pitta, very, very imbalanced Pitta, it can be very difficult. These are individuals that usually burn many, many, many bridges just to get their way, just for them to be in control. And it's a very common sign of an imbalance. You see there, because they're so sensitive. This is an energy, this is an element that at its core, it's the water, which makes, again, the water represents emotions, represents the fluidity, represents the ability to see things in different perspectives, the ability to be empathetic, the ability to be more receptive, to receive healing in our lives through love from people, through love from nature, from our own love. So because they have evaporated the water by operating only on the fire element, which is an imbalance in itself, this requires, for example, now we'll pose a question. Do you recognize these characteristics within yourself? Do you recognize them in your spouse, your partner, your friends, any person in your life that you care about? If you don't recognize these particular characteristics in you, but for example, you do recognize them in your spouse or your girlfriend, your boyfriend, or your son, your daughter, well, the two other doshas, the Vata and the Pitta dosha, the Vata, which is the air, and the Kapha, which is earth, they all need their balancing when they're out of balance, but Pitta get the most balance with love. And again, Ayurveda is practical. So don't say, oh my God, now that we're going to start talking about, no, genuinely, of course, we're going to talk about all the things that balances. But the reason why I'm saying is because this element is so intense. It burns. There's so much intensity. There's so much pain. They inflict so much pain in themselves because of the same intensity they show others, triple that. That's how intense they are with themselves. They're very harsh with themselves. The way they lead when they are out of balance, it's all about themselves. The ego, a very unhealthy ego. We all have ego, and it's very necessary in order for us to understand awareness. But when it comes to unhealthy ego, it's them. Like Pitta operates in such a self-centered and egotistic way. Pitta individual that is imbalanced constantly need to be the best at whatever they do. Whatever they find themselves, they always need to be the center of attention in a very smart way. They're not like Vata, that like the center of attention in goofy ways and joyful ways. No. Vata likes to be the smartest person in the room, and they need to be praised. They need to be, they need to constantly feel that people respect them. And if they don't feel respected, they will try to do everything they can to show people why is that you need to respect them. What happens when the fire gets too high? What's one of the most telling things that we can, when it comes to descriptions, it's very luminous, right? It's very bright. And if the fire is really out of control, then the brightness is out of control too. It's too bright. What happens when things are too bright in front of us? We cannot see. Well, this comes to the awareness. When this individual is so extremely out of balance, they will not be able to see how imbalanced they are, how self-centered, how jealous, how aggressive they are, because they're only seeing, they're blinded by their own ego. They're blinded by their own element, right? By the extreme expression of this element. Now, let's talk about tendencies. So we said that the Pitta dosha has tendencies towards anger, tendencies towards jealousy, control issues. They have tendency towards, so going back to the concept of likes attracts likes. Likes attracts likes, it means that if we are a fire element or any element, we're talking about fire element here. So I am going to gravitate towards more fire naturally. So the choices that an imbalance or out of balance Pitta dosha tends to make are choices that is actually bringing more fire in them. For example, if I were to ask someone that is very, very imbalanced, and by the way, imbalances, how does someone start becoming imbalanced? Imbalance, it can be many things. Lifestyle is one of the main ones. So our environment too, right? Sometimes it's out of our control. Sometimes we work in a very Pitta environment, or we are surrounded at home by very imbalancing energies from individuals, from the choices that we make to decorate our home, because everything is feeding us. Everything is always constantly nurturing us in good and bad ways. What do I mean by that? So Ayurveda says that everything is constantly feeding us, as I mentioned. It's feeding us through our senses. So through the sense of hearing, the sense of sight, the sense of touch. So whatever I eat, right? I'm ingesting food, I'm feeding myself through the choices I have made by what I just ate. Whatever I chose to eat is feeding me, and it has a particular expression of an element that could be of benefit or not. For example, if I indulge in conversations that are highly, highly mental, right? That are extremely stimulating, and those are Pitta aggravating, because it makes me even, more mental. It makes me more, again, it's not really bringing water. It's not really bringing more soothing and cooling or earth, more stability, more calmness. It's bringing more of the same element. And usually these are things that Pitta dosha loves. They love debates. They love, again, competition. So if I were to ask someone also, what are you into? Like, how do you exercise? They will say, oh, I love, the majority of them, they like competitive sports and also high impact sports. And if I were to ask them, oh, what time do you like to exercise? The majority of them are actually going to say, oh, around midday. Right? Like, I don't know, around noon, between 12 and 3. Usually that is the hottest time of the day. And even at the gym. Now, if you were to ask them, so what do you like to eat? They usually love spices. They love hot heating foods, right? Like spicy food, which brings more heat into their body, right? So that's what I'm trying to say. Another thing, so likes attracts likes. The tendencies, they also gravitate, some of the tendencies, they tend to gravitate towards alcohol. Alcohol is extremely Pitta aggravating. Like when I say extremely, it's extremely Pitta aggravating. The majority of very imbalanced Pitta dosha individuals, they love alcohol. It's also, again, it's a cultural thing too. When you see the tendencies, you start recognizing, maybe it's for yourself, then ask yourself multiple questions, and you're going to start noticing that some of your imbalances are being reinforced because we are attracting more of the same element that is imbalancing us. A salad is more dry, right? It's more cold. So it's usually a vata, it's an air, right? Conversations, debates. What element would you give to a very, very like intense debate? A Pitta dosha. What element would you give to, instead of a debate, it's maybe a mediation, a very, very good mediation. And maybe you will give an earth element. We haven't explored the other elements as much as this one, but I'm just trying to make, just explore and expand on why it's important to understand the characteristics, because everything is always feeding us. Everything, our conversations, the choices that we make when it comes to friends, when it comes to acquaintances, the choices that we make at work, the choices that we make with our food, the colors that we choose, not only the colors that we choose to wear, the colors that we choose to have around us. So when we have an understanding, and this now goes back to the practicality of this science. The science has helped me so much in so many ways, because again, as soon as I start analyzing and I start recognizing, that's the word, when I start recognizing that the expression of certain imbalances, I try to be proactive and start now bringing the opposite energy. Again, this is a little too advanced because we haven't seen the other doshas, and this is the part where in the other classes, we're going to explore whether it is kapha or vata next, but keep in mind, this class is over an hour, just a little bit under an hour and a half, hopefully. But it used to be a 4-hour class. Every single time I've given this class, I always put a 3-hour class, and it moves to 4 hours because people want to learn more. It's a beautiful science, as you can see. It's a very, very practical science, but please do not expect to understand absolutely everything just in one class, especially when it's kind of fast. We're only focusing on one dosha. It's a class, but I hope just that by having a very basic understanding of how this science helps us, how practical really is. And if I highly suggest, if you're really like kind of resonating with the topic, I highly suggest for you to do your own homework. Never believe everything you hear just like that. Always do your own homework and learn a little bit more. You're going to start realizing, as soon as you start Googling Ayurveda, you're going to come across a lot of diets and supplement-based Ayurvedic, I'm going to say this, like approaches. The way I was taught, it was not that way, and I'm glad. Both of the physicians that I learned from are actually from the same part of India. They learned in a way, in the same way. That's why one recommended the other, and I'm very grateful. And it's genuinely the reason why I kept going to them, and also I kept learning, because it felt so freeing. Unfortunately, some parts of Ayurveda has been very commercialized, and it has been made mostly into this diet, but it's more than that. In this, I was taught Ayurveda as a lifestyle, as, hey, you choose what works for you and incorporate more as you go, instead of saying, okay, you cannot, a Pitta dosha, can I eat this? Shouldn't I eat this? And we should go and actually just throw everything that we have away and completely restock our pantry. And that is only creating more. We already, as individuals, right? This is a Vedic concept. Vedic is the back end. It's pretty much the philosophy that drives yoga, Ayurveda, Jyotish, and all these other beautiful sciences. But what it really says is, it's a matter of, in order for us to be able to express and be the best that we can be as human beings, we need to start recognizing that it's our responsibility to understand, to have more awareness, not only about who we are, but also the people around us and the life, about life in general. In order for us to do that, Ayurveda suggests to be in a Sattvic state of mind. Now you might say, what did you just say? They what? Now we're moving towards it. I'm not going to, you know what? Actually, let me pause over here, because the Sattvic state of mind is really what's going to, in a way, override a lot of these do's and don'ts. Sattvic state of mind is whatever you choose to do, just try to be in a state of mind that is of love, of clarity, of presence, of awareness. And is a much better way, and a much more effective way to balance absolutely any dosha. Whatever imbalances you have, they start really bringing balance into your life by simply being more aware, by being more loving, by being more compassionate. Just again, by showing more signs of the Sattvic state of mind. We're going to talk about tamas and rajas. And you could say this is a little bit more advanced, but I just want to show this for clarity, because this is how I teach. This is literally how I drive almost every aspect of my life, or how I try to drive almost every aspect of my life when it comes to the tools that Ayurveda has given me. I have tried the other methods of, like, okay, if I have an imbalance in kapha dosha, let me look for a kapha pacifying diet. And yes, of course, everything works, everything helps. I wouldn't say everything works, everything helps, but nothing has helped me the most as when I started just learning a little bit more about the philosophy itself. And I'm not saying I will teach the philosophy, no, because that it's very extremely deep. And I don't know, it just depends on the personality of the person if they're into that. But just to kind of say, what we're going to be doing is really approaching Ayurveda from a very aware, loving, and peaceful state of mind. We're going to strive to do everything that we do in our lives normally from this state of mind, because it will change everything. And I will prove it to you if you have babies in your life. If you have an infant and you kind of practice this mindfulness and awareness, and then you hold the child, especially after the baby being fussy, you recognize how the child immediately recognizes that state in you. I always say to people, don't believe me, try it. But again, it has to be a genuine state. Now, let me go back. Now you might be saying, how do we balance? Okay, we're talking about all the imbalances. This dosha seems to be like a pretty severe case. When they are imbalanced, unfortunately, they're very difficult to be around them. And if this is your wife, or this is your husband, or this is you, this is someone you love in your life, every single dosha, in a way, responds very well to love. But the Pitta dosha is the one that is just something else. So if you have the ability to rise above their expression of anger, their expression of hurt, of the deep sense of entitlement, right? That they are on top of the world and everybody needs to deal with it. If you can rise above that and provide love and show very gentle aspects of you to this individual as much as you can through your food when you're cooking, if you cook in the house, or through the choices that you make, if you already learned, okay, now how can we balance, right? We're talking about that. Try to always do everything from remember how much you love the person, whether it's your son, your daughter, always bring that to your mind. Say, I love this person. And I'm going to cook. If you're cooking, I'm going to cook with that love. I'm going to cook knowing that that even though the spices that I'm using might be Pitta aggravating, this is the part that I literally love people to understand. The concept of Pitta aggravating and Pitta pacifying diets, or dosha pacifying diets that you're going to find mostly everywhere. It's about, okay, bring herbs, grains, fruits, and vegetables that has the opposite energy. And it's very important. Yes, you should do that. But don't get stuck on that. Because when people just focus on the diet itself, and they're now focusing on how are they preparing the food and the state of mind they find themselves. What is the environment at home? Like, is there something you can modify? Maybe it is the physical environment, right? Everything has a, for example, I don't know if you guys can see the background, my background, right? It's light. It's spacey, right? There's not much going on in the background. Well, I do it that way for reasons, right? Because I'm constantly overstimulated by many things. So I try for my environment to feed me through the sense of sight by looking at things that are cooling, that are soothing, right? So this is a way also. We don't have to go and tell people, oh my God, you're so out of you're so imbalanced. If you can modify certain things around the person, you will help them that way. If it's you, the more you learn about Ayurveda and what are the expression of the elements on everything, on the colors, on the food, on the flavors, on the time of the days, the seasons, everything has the 5 elements. Now, the way we work with those elements, the choices that we make is what makes the difference. So I always say, if it's you and you're cooking and you might not know if the particular spices that you're using or the particular food that you're using is Pitta aggravating or Pitta pacifying, don't worry about it. Whatever you have in front of you, if you're still going to eat it, enjoy it. You see, bring your food to your body with joy. And because we are constantly, you see, especially for us women, this concept out there that we need to look in a certain way. We're constantly to be losing weight, and we have to look hot all the time and sexy and pretty. And well, so many of us have a lot of, in a way, pressure to look in a certain way. So this really is a really good thing for us too, women, because when we eat our food and we don't feel guilty, that is a Sattvic state of mind. Right? Meaning when you truly, but not feel like, oh, I just ate this burger and I just had 7 other burgers earlier and I don't feel bad about it. No, that's not it. Honestly, that's an imbalance, mostly of the Pitta dosha. But what I'm saying is you want to bring love into your life in any way you can, in any capacity that you can. In this case, it's just by being grateful that you're having such a great meal, or that you made such a great meal, or you were able to buy, or you're just experiencing it, you're having a great experience at a restaurant, and okay, whatever, it might not be what is suggested for an Ayurvedic, for a Pitta dosha to eat, but when you're there, be very present, enjoy the conversations, enjoy the food. If you can choose, obviously, if you can make a choice for something that is a little bit more balancing, then make it. For example, instead of asking for spicy tacos, you can ask for tacos that are not spicy or a little bit less spice. For example, mild instead of hot, right? Those are choices. But regardless, the most important thing is how you are ingesting that food, the type of conversations you're choosing to have, right? For example, the conversation is getting into complaining about your manager, you're complaining, or the person next to you, your friend, is just complaining and is being very judgmental or rude, where you can choose not to engage. You can choose to change the topic because you know that's feeding you, right? It's going to start a debate and it's going to start increasing your fire when actually, so personally, I try to do that a lot. I try to be very, very mindful on the choices I'm making with individuals, with when I'm working. If I want to see someone on the weekend, I try to think, okay, I want someone that is more upbeat because I'm feeling a little too low or feeling a little too like I'm feeling too much inertia, right? Like too much kapha. And there's a little too much. I need more energy. So I will try to call my Pitta friends or just have a conversations with them, or just put music and start dancing and just bring more fire into my body, things like that. When we are making choices for our homes, and I don't know, maybe for your son who's a teenager, and you recognize a extreme Pitta imbalance in him, try to choose a room that the son, right? For example, he wants the attic because it's spacey, but the attic are usually the hardest part of a house, right? It is very, very hot. It's usually very, there's a lot of light. So that means it's a Pitta room, because it has mostly the energy that it's concentrated there, the sun energy, which is fire energy. So instead, excuse me. So instead, again, you will make a choice and say, okay, for my son, let me put him here. It's a little bit more cooling. The choices, for example, you have a baby. Babies also, again, once you start recognizing and identifying and spotting the expressions, I keep saying this over and over, and I did say that in the beginning, right? We're going to be repeating the same concept over and over, because it is very important. We do come across the same concept over and over in here. Anyway, perhaps you have a baby that's very colicky, or a baby that is really fussy, a very fussy baby. Listen, I think this is really one of the most practical things that I came across Ayurveda. It was when I was a family support worker. So I had to deal with a lot of kids, many, many babies, many toddlers, many children under the age of 5. And then I started analyzing and recognizing that the problem wasn't the kids. Many times the problem wasn't the environment, the way the kids were spoken to, the ways the kids were spoken to, the way the kid was touched. Sometimes it's too harsh. Sometimes our approach is too harsh. Also with a Pitta, they get very imbalanced when they don't find that nurturing, that very soothing aspects in their spouses. Because that's what they need. Again, they recognize unconsciously within themselves, they recognize that they need the water element. But when they don't see it, they slash, right? Like to just go back into this very intense and very, very harsh energy. So I guess this is really where I'm bringing the Sattvic state of mind. You see, it just works for almost everything, because as soon as you recognize, you know what, let me bring more Sattvic. Whatever you do is okay at that moment, whatever food you're eating, whatever environment you find themselves, because that overrides everything. We're going to dive more into that, but now in more practical ways. Like I said, make choices. If you recognize, for example, that your exercise is bringing, the type of exercises that you're choosing is bringing too much heat into your body. Remember, bringing heat into our body also represents bringing heat into our mind. We're not disconnected from our body. So you can make choices. For example, give it a chance to yoga, gentle yoga. I love when people say, when people say, yes, I transition to yoga, and they're doing, I don't know, vinyasa or hot yoga, right? And then they're just sweating and doing all these poses, and it's so hot. I'm like, you're bringing more Pitta. So just be mindful. Go for a swim. Go swimming. If you like running, still go run, but just choose a other time of the day, right? There's times, Pitta, there's Pitta dosha time, there's the Vata time, there's the Kapha time. Try to look for something where maybe run at night, or maybe run after 5 p.m., 6 p.m., where the sun is not as intense, or very early in the morning when it's a little bit more cooling. Instead of choosing hot spices like hot pepper, black pepper, ginger, garlic, there's ways, okay? Add more cilantro, right? Cilantro is very cooling. Add a little bit more parsley, add a little bit more oregano, right? It just helps to balance the heat If you have a very spicy food, then add a little bit of cilantro. It really helps. Or simply avoid adding so much spice, especially in the summertime. Right now, we have a fairly good understanding of the Pitta dosha and how does it manifest and how it can balance it. And at the same time, we're going to be diving much deeper into Tamas, Sattva, and Rajas. And just to, again, just for the sake of this presentation today, I could say that Ayurveda, Rajas, Tamas, and Sattvas are known as the three gunas. Gunas, you could say, are qualities, okay? So again, gunas is also a Sanskrit word. So gunas are like qualities that exist. So these are qualities that exist within all aspects of creation, including our minds and our personalities. Remember, we are never, ever apart. We are not disconnected from anything. From nature, from creation, from nothing. So, but by adopting a Sattvic state of mind is really what helps us. This is how I teach, it's how I was taught, and is literally what I emphasize the most. It's a very, very simplistic and practical science, but when we actually approach it through a Sattvic state, then it becomes a beautiful way of living, just making conscious decisions as much as we can without bringing too much, without being too pragmatic and following rules and following all these protocols that, some Ayurvedic individuals like to go with. And again, everybody teaches their own way, but I was taught in this way and I loved it because of it. I don't like, if I can actually stop following so many rules and just start being more present and more aware from my own, on my own, and just using tools that allows me to maintain that awareness and that presence as much as I can daily to bring more harmony into my life, my psyche, my mind, my relationships, my career, every aspect of my life, my physical body. Then that's what I want. And that's what Ayurveda has done for me. And it has done the same for many, many people. But anyway, thank you so much. These are some of the resources that I want to share with you guys. This is a great, great, great resource. The National Ayurvedic Medical Association, when someone becomes a certified Ayurvedic professional from different modalities, this is their certification body. They have great information on this website. If you go to my website, Grace in Action, you can read. I actually wrote this particular blog. It's called Crash Course on the History of Ayurveda. It's about 2-minute read, very simple. Banyan Botanicals, you can take a dosha quiz. So actually, you can take a quiz, which I'm going to be sharing the quiz in class as well, for us to learn a little bit more what are some of the imbalances that we're currently seeing in ourselves. Now, there's multiple tests that we can take. I like the Banyan Botanical ones. Also, if you dive a little deeper and you start reading a little bit more and you do decide that you want some herbs and stuff like that, I always say to individuals, embrace the lifestyle first, right? Before we move into the supplements and all these things that are of great benefit to us. I use some of them, but if we do move there, Banyan Botanicals is my preferred. I honestly have asked almost every single physician I've come across, Ayurvedic physicians, and they all say the quality that Banyan Botanical offers is really, really high. So I also wanted to point that out. But anyway, with that being said, again, thank you so much for watching. If you like what you hear, we're going to be diving much more into these. We're going to have more classes like this one. Allow me to kind of refresh your memory. The class is every last Wednesday of every month. Again, thank you for your time, and I'll see you in the next class or next video. Bye-bye.